Surprises often bloom in the most unexpected of places. Kind of like how this unassuming little azalea was a surprisingly great seller for my backyard business. So in today's video, we're going to talk azaleas, and I'm going to tell you the history of this plant, how I got it for just $1, and how I was able to turn that dollar into much more. We're also going to talk about azalea care and propagation, and how I'm going to use this one plant to make many more plants to support my backyard business for years to come. So whether you're interested in starting a summer side hustle like mine, or you just want to learn how to add more beautiful plants to your landscape for little to no money, let's dig in and get growing. The fall before last, I was very friendly with a local nursery manager for one of my local stores, and when I was going clearance plant shopping at the end of the season, I asked him if he had anything that he'd like to get rid of really cheap that I could snap up. So he offered me a deal on these August Moon azaleas for only $1 each. I was able to buy 11 of them for $11 plus tax, of course. I wasn't sure at the time if azaleas would be a good seller for my nursery, but within a week of bringing them home, a neighbor happened to ask me if I had any azaleas for sale. They had lost one of theirs because we had had drought conditions that summer. So I sold my neighbor one of my plants for $5, which was a great deal for him. The plants were in such good condition that I didn't need to do anything to them. I didn't need to cut them back. I didn't need to up-pot them. I added just a little bit of soil to the pot. I didn't even fertilize. I just tucked them in the back of my hoop house to overwinter for the season because they're only hardy to zone 7, which is my zone, but being that they're in pots, they need a little bit of winter protection. I threw them in the back of my hoop house and they emerged beautiful and green in the spring. I gave them some fertilizer, I watered them, and at my first plant sale of the season, which was at a local charity event, I put them out for sale and they flew off the shelves. I sold 9 of them that day, and I only had this one left because this one was in back of all the other plants. It didn't get as much water and it wasn't in such great condition, so I didn't bring it to the sale that day. I sold 9 plants and I had people asking me for more. After I nursed this guy back to health, last September, I decided to take some cuttings. It turns out that these azaleas rooted super easy. I had like a 95% success rate. And those cuttings have now grown into small plants which need to be up-potted and cut back. If you watched my hydrangea video, then you know that when you're cutting back plants, it's the perfect time to take cuttings, so that's what we're going to do today. So azaleas are known to be slow growers, but look at this. These are branching out so nicely and really getting big much quicker than I expected. So I took these cuttings last year in the beginning of September. They rooted in about 6 weeks and I left them in my heated greenhouse over the winter time because they were too young to be out in the elements. And now here we are, they are way past ready for being up-potted. In fact, let me show you the roots. So today I'm going to be moving from these smaller pots to these bigger pots. Now you can see they're not tremendously bigger, but it will give the roots time to expand, and these will get up-potted to 1-gallon pots very early next spring so that they can be ready for sale. First, I'm going to up-pot a few of these. I did a bunch of them already. Then we're going to shape these plants to make them more attractive and use the cuttings as propagation material for new plants next year. Today, I'm going to be using these green seed starting trays that I got from Amazon. I use these to start my seeds back in the spring, and I love them because they come with the humidity dome. But the other reason why I like these is because the inside tray is clear. So rather than having to guess, oh my goodness, did it root? I can just take this tray out and I'll be able to see the roots, so I'm not tugging on things and possibly damaging some young roots. These also come with a bottom tray. This is good because you can bottom water later on when the plants are actively growing. But for now, because there's no drainage holes in the bottom, it will also help to keep that humidity in. Humidity is not much of an issue right now. You could probably tell by my hair, it is super humid out. In this black tray, I have some pre-moistened potting soil that I'm going to use to fill the tray. I find it's easier for me to work with the soil a little bit damp so it's not flying all over in the air, but it's also better for the plants. I will water these in at the end as well. I'm just going to make sure that all of the cells in the tray are filled with the potting soil. And I do this in the tray so I don't lose any of the soil. There you go. Next, I'm going to use a dibbler to just poke a hole in the center of each cell. Now you can use a stick, you can use a pencil. This blue dibbler came with the seed trays, so I've been using that, but anything about pencil thickness will work well. I feel like every time I start recording a video for you, you can always hear the slight din of somebody's landscapers in the background. I really hope that I can edit that out. So I'm going to put this on the side. I'm going to up pot just a couple of the plants that I have left to put in bigger pots. And I'm going to give them a slow release fertilizer for acid-loving plants. Autumn Moon is an evergreen type of azalea. Not all azaleas are evergreen, but the evergreen kind tend to be easier to propagate from. And that's not my opinion, that's what the experts say. So I was lucky that that happened to be the kind that my nursery manager was looking to get rid of for the season. And these plants are non-patented, so I am allowed legally to propagate from them. However, if you are doing this for your own yard, I don't think the plant police are going to come and get you if you're propagating a patented variety. This particular type of azalea has a two-toned flower. It's pink along the edges and then has a white throat. And a lot of the people that bought them from me at our spring sale last year really loved the fact that it was a two-tone flower. Now, if you don't know much about azaleas, you should know that they are a spring bloomer. This is a later blooming variety, so this one blooms late May to early June in my area and I live in zone 7. So it could be earlier or later depending on your zone. There are also some varieties that are early season or late season. So it's nice to be able to combine all 3 seasons. That way you always have something blooming. And I find that they are one of the first things, at least in my area, to bloom along with things like daffodils. When a lot of other things that don't bloom until the summer haven't started yet, it's a great way to get color. Azaleas prefer partial shade. They work best when they can get some morning sun and then afternoon shade, at least in my climate. But if that's different where you live, let me know in the comments below. Part of the reason why I wanted to cut these back and up pot them now is because, like hydrangeas, azaleas bloom on old wood. So by cutting them now, they'll have plenty of time to grow out this season and they'll still get lots of flowers next year. I have my tray of pre-moistened soil. I have some rooting hormone in this red cup. I use Hormodin. I've had this jar for probably 3 years. It lasts a really long time. And I have my plant material here, as well as some clean snips. I'm just going to come into these plants and even out the branches. By cutting back each branch, it is going to force it to branch out even more, which will be more beautiful, attractive plants for next season. For each one of these, I'm going to cut just below a leaf node. You want to have at least 3 leaf nodes per cutting, preferably 4 or 5, depending on the size of your tray. These azalea cuttings have leaf nodes that are spaced really closely together, so it should be easy for me to get 2 cuttings from each of these little branches that I'm taking. So I'm going to do 4 leaf nodes on this one. And then I'm going to cut again just below this leaf node. And this still gives me 4 leaf nodes. I'm going to cut out the top. That top was really thin material that hadn't started to harden yet, so it was very weak and it would have wilted very quickly, which could kill the cutting. So for each cutting, I'm going to take the bottom leaves off, leaving only 2 at the top, and I'm going to put them in water. I'm going to leave 3 on that one. Then I'm going to dip them into my rooting hormone, tap off the excess, and put it in the tray. Now, if you were propagating something that had more space in between the leaf nodes, you would want to use a bigger tray. They sell them at most garden centers and definitely online. But these little seed propagation trays work really well for things that have their leaf nodes close together. And with the rooting hormone, I like the Hormodin because I find that it's really versatile and I can use it on a lot of different cuttings. I use this same process for most things that I propagate, and I use the Hormodin for almost everything. But if you have something else on hand, if you have the Clonex gel or you have a liquid, that's all fine too. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I found that these rooted really quickly and really well. So I'm excited to have even more plants. You want to always cut at a 45-degree angle. The more leaf nodes that you have below the soil, the better the chances are that you're going to get roots. And that's not only true of azaleas, but of most other things as well. So I was initially thinking that I was going to do half a tray of azaleas and then I would do something else for the other half of the tray. But it looks like I have so much cutting material, we'll probably get a full tray. Let's find out. From my 9 original cuttings, I now have a tray of 40 cuttings. If they're as successful as the cuttings that I did last year, I should end up with at least 35 plants, which will grow into plants that look like this by next spring. And hopefully these plants will grow to be almost as big as this plant by next spring, and they'll be ready for sale. So out of the 11 plants that I originally bought for $11, I reserved one. I sold one for $5 and I sold 9 for $10. So I turned $1 into $95. But then if these 49 plants also sell for $10 each, that would be another $490. So for a $1 investment, I stand to make almost a $600 profit, although you do have to be patient because this process will take a year to 2 years depending on how fast they grow. Like I said, I did put them in my heated greenhouse, so I think that that really did help with their overwinter growth. They grew a lot faster than they would have if they had been in an unheated hoop house. If you don't have a hoop house or a greenhouse, that's okay. You could always just bring them in your house, especially if you're doing small numbers. I don't know that I would want to bring 40 up-potted plants into my house, but if you're only doing 5 or 6, that's an easy fit. My next step for this now is to water it in really well and then cover it with this plastic humidity dome to keep the humidity in. I'll leave it in my hoop house in an area that doesn't get direct sunlight because the direct sunlight would make the cuttings too hot and they would wilt. And since they're acid-loving plants and I have my acid-loving fertilizer out for the plants that I up-potted into the bigger pots, I have an update for you on the gardenias that we propagated last year. Now, if you remember from last year, we propagated these gardenias only using water and a Chinese food container. It was super easy, relatively quick, and now these plants have grown up and they're ready to also be up-potted and cut back. I'm hoping to have these for sale next year as well. So these were the cuttings that we did together on the video that I released last August. And this is what the plants that I did a couple of months before that look like now. So you can see that these are also kind of slow growers, but by this time next year, these plants will be sale ready. The one thing that I can tell you with these gardenias is I love them. I love the smell of them. but I had an epic battle keeping them overwintered in the heated greenhouse. They did great the whole beginning of the winter, and I was so happy because usually when I bring my gardenias inside, they always end up with spider mites. And this year I made it all the way until like February and no bugs. I was so happy. Unfortunately, as soon as I think I said it to my husband, of course, we had fungus gnats and spider mites that showed up. So I had a battle trying to get rid of those bugs, and it really wasn't until I brought them outside in the spring after my last frost date that they started to get better. And it wasn't because of anything that I did. I walked by one day and they were covered in ladybugs, and the ladybugs took care of that problem for me, which just shows you how amazing nature really is. So I'm gonna go water in my azaleas and put them in a protected place. And this is where those cuttings will live for the next 4 weeks until I check them. You can see that the condensation is already building up on the inside of the humidity dome, which is great for the plants. And you can see that while there's no direct sunlight here, there is plenty of light. The plants need light in order to set roots. I hope this video was helpful for you. Thanks so much for watching today. Have a great day.